This is 9 News with Lizzie Pearl.
Good afternoon. Gladys Berejiklian has sensationally resigned as Premier of New South Wales after being made the subject of a public inquiry by the Independent Commission Against Corruption. The watchdog is investigating whether the outgoing Premier breached public trust through her past relationship with former MP Darryl Maguire.
To make an extremely difficult decision overnight, but one which I feel obliged to do because of the love and respect I have for the people of New South Wales and the high regard which I have for the office of Premier. I was advised late yesterday afternoon the Independent Commission Against Corruption will today release a public statement in which it will state it is investigating allegations made about me concerning matters relating to the former member for Wagga Wagga. As it is clear from the ICAC statement, the issues which it is investigating are historic matters that have already been the subject of numerous attacks on me by political opponents in the last 12 months. I want to be very clear. In all the decisions I have ever made as a Minister or as Premier of New South Wales, my first consideration has always been the well-being and welfare of the people of this state. I state categorically I've always acted with the highest level of integrity. History will demonstrate that I've always executed my duties, again, with the highest level of integrity for the benefit of the people of New South Wales, who I have had the privilege to serve. As the Leader of the New South Wales Government, I have expected the highest standards of myself and my colleagues. I have made it clear on numerous occasions that if any of my ministers were the subject of allegations being investigated by an integrity agency or law enforcement, then he or she should stand aside during the course of the investigation until their name was cleared. Therefore, it pains me to announce that I have no option but to resign from the office of Premier. My resignation will take effect as soon as the New South Wales Liberal Party can elect a new parliamentary leader. In order to allow the new leader and government a fresh start, I'll also resign from the New South Wales Parliament once I've consulted the Electoral Commission on appropriate timing for a by-election, given the COVID restrictions. My resignation as Premier could not occur at a worse time, but the timing is completely outside of my control, as the ICAC has chosen to take this action during the most challenging weeks of the most challenging times in the state's history. That is the ICAC's prerogative. Resigning at this time is against every instinct in my being and something which I do not want to do. I love my job and I love serving the community, but I have been given no option following the statement that's been issued today.
The Premier's resignation came as the Prime Minister and Victoria's Premier were holding media conferences. They were immediately asked for their reaction.
Gladys is a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time. She has displayed heroic qualities as the Premier of New South Wales. I have worked with her extremely closely, and she has always been a vibrant spirit when it comes to our debates, doing the best for the people of New South Wales. I know how much she is trusted and respected by the people of New South Wales, and I have no doubt that Gladys will always conduct herself in a way that suits the integrity of the office that she's held, and I know how seriously she takes that trust.
I'm not here to be running a commentary on her, other than to state the absolute fact that I've always worked very closely with her. And I find her to be a person of integrity and a person that works hard for her state and has been a very important partner with us.
The Queensland Premier, who's often been at odds with Ms Berejiklian, has released a statement wishing her the best for the future and adding she has always respected her. And Chris O'Keefe joins me now in the studio this afternoon. Chris, this is a bombshell. There's a lot to unpack. Talk us through why Gladys had to resign.
Well, it was unfortunate timing, as the Premier said, but when ICAC made her the subject of the investigation, said there would be public hearings into Gladys Berejiklian's potential breach of trust, public trust. The Premier had no choice but to resign that position, and the reason for that is she has set a standard, as you heard in her press conference with her other ministers. John Sidoti is currently facing a corruption commission hearing now. He had to resign. We saw Gareth Ward, another minister. He was under police investigation, an investigation that still hasn't been resolved. He also had to resign. So we've seen Barry O'Farrell go over a bottle of Grange in 2014. We saw Nick Greiner also resign as the Premier when the ICAC turned its crosshairs on Mr Greiner too. So there is precedent for this, and Ms Berejiklian today did the only thing unfortunately she could do given what we have seen in the past. But it was broken Gladys Berejiklian at that press conference, making that decision today. She's obviously slept very little after she heard from the ICAC last night that they were going to make this statement, that they were holding public hearings into her potential conduct that they were concerned about. And she looked really upset. At times it looked like she was trying not to cry. She had some of her closest friends and ministerial mates in the room. Matt Keane, Brad Hazzard, Victor Dominello, they were all there. Matt Keane almost looked like he was in tears when he was watching a really good friend of his, you know, essentially, because this isn't the voters kicking her out, it's not even her own colleagues kicking her out in a spill. This is lawyers at the ICAC making this decision for her, unfortunately. Now, where Gladys Berejiklian is left now is that she's not only going to resign as the Premier of this state, but she's resigning from Parliament. Now, she's been the member for Willoughby since 2003. That's quite a number of years, almost 20 years she's been in the New South Wales Parliament serving the public. So this is going to be quite the adjustment for the Premier. Not only that, but she's got to then go to the ICAC on the stand like she did here when she first found out or had to divulge details of her personal relationship with Daryl Maguire at the back end of last year. So this has been hanging over the Premier's head for quite a while, and all that time she shut up every day. She's trying to steer us through this pandemic. We've got Freedom Day in a couple of weeks. We're still pushing towards this 80 and 90% double dose vaccination. There is still a pandemic ongoing. And Gladys Berejiklian today attacked ICAC about the timing of their decision to haul her over the coals and the state lose a Premier and the nation lose a leader.
Yeah. And now that the Premier's gone, that there's people lining up for the job, who are the key challengers? Who are making those phone calls this afternoon?
So we're getting Stuart Ayres. He's a tourism minister and in the moderate faction of the Liberal Party. We've also got Dominic Perrottet, and as well there's a smoky who's put his hand up, is Rob Stokes, a planning minister. So at the moment it's understood that Dom Perrottet probably just has the support at this point to become New South Wales's next Premier, but there is still a way to go about whether or not he will be able to cobble together the numbers. He's from the Conservative faction. It is not the dominant faction of the Liberal Party, so he will need the support from the moderate faction, which is Gladys Berejiklian's faction. Now, she is not going to anoint a successor like we saw Mike Baird do in 2017 when he anointed Gladys Berejiklian as his successor. She will not do that. She'll leave it to the Liberal Party to decide who the next leader is. But they are all men and they do not have the experience that Gladys Berejiklian has got. And I think the people of New South Wales today, if the reaction is anything to go by, regardless of what the allegations are and what ICAC might throw up in this corruption hearing in a couple of weeks' time, there's a disappointment and almost a bit of sadness about the fact that she's been forced to resign. And seeing Gladys Berejiklian like she was in that press conference today, I think as a state, for most rational people, it was pretty hard to watch.
Yeah, it is going to be a messy one, and we will have more on this shock resignation throughout the bulletin. Thank you, Chris. Well, no lockdown in Queensland means it is game on for the NRL Grand Final, and Brisbane is gearing up for the decider. Reece D'Alessandro has more.